Chair, is your microphone on?
Let me push the one that's correct. Okay. All right. It's 1:03 still. And I am hereby calling to order the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Tax Agency Board of Directors meeting. First step, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, all with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next question, are there any board members attending remotely?
There are not.
Good. Then could we have a roll call, please?
Scott Sedgley. Bernie Narvaez. Liz Alessio. Amber Manfrey. Mark Joseph.
Here.
Pierre Washington. Margie Moeller. Robin McKee. Here. Paul Doring.
Here.
Michelle Deasy. Donald Williams.
Present.
Kevin Eisenberg.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? And if not, do we have a motion and second to adopt the agenda? All right. Any second?
I'll second.
Oh, I think Bernie beat you all. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. Any?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here.
Oh, okay. And then public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda relating to the taxing authority? Anybody online? All right, no public comment. Any chairperson or board member updates? All right. Any executive director updates? Even better. Okay, consent item. There's only one item, the minutes from the last meeting. We'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Doring.
Second, Alessio.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, perfect. No regular item. Yes, we do have a regular item. This is regarding the formation of the Measure U Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee vis-a-vis the Measure T. So Danielle, if you'll take it away.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, members of the board. Danielle Schmitz here to present item 10.1, the formation of the Measure U Independent Tax Oversight Committee, known as the ITAC. The action before the board today is to approve Resolution 25-01-TA, forming the Measure U ITAC. The current ITAC is for Measure T, our half-cent sales tax that goes to local streets and roads. And presiding over the Citizen Oversight Committee, we have selected citizens that meet specific credentials or requirements for overviewing the Measure T ITAC. And Measure U replaces Measure T come July 1st, 2025, and all the same requirements of the formation of the ITAC overseeing the citizen oversight, ensuring fiscal accountability of the measure is the same in Measure U. And so what the resolution is asking the board to do today is to approve the current ITAC as the new Measure U ITAC coming July 1st, 2025. We currently have one vacancy on the ITAC for a certified public accountant. We will be soliciting for that position, and then we will be allowing the current members of the ITAC to serve out their term because the structure and responsibilities of the Measure ITAC will remain the same under Measure U as they were under Measure T. And also within the first couple years of the ITAC committee, they will be reviewing both Measure T and Measure U projects, reporting and auditing. And so with that, I will turn it over to the board to answer any questions you may have. Again, the approval today is for Resolution 25-01-TA, forming the Measure You, I Talk Committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? This is a relatively routine item, transitioning from one funding source to another. And any comments from the public?
We have questions.
We
Oh.
both have the lights on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Um, Well, we'll
Just
let
a quick question. Is this compensated or volunteer only?
It is compensated quarterly, so they have quarterly meetings, and the compensation, I believe, is $375 per meeting, and then there's an increase for a cost of COI periodically.
Thank you.
Director Alessio.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just want to give some perspective. As board chair, as it says in the packet, you attend these meetings. And so since I was previous board chair, I just want to let the board know that this is a very serious committee. They take this role very seriously. And I appreciate the service that they do. In addition, the public works directors from the different jurisdictions also often attend. And so just want to commend them on the work that they do. And this makes a perfect transition just to keep it simple. It's working very well, and to move this over to Measure U.
Thank you. That's a good point. I've begun attending them, and it is an important issue. They do address issues that need to be addressed, and so very good function. Hope we can fill that CPA slot as soon as possible. With that, if there are no other comments and there wasn't any public comment, then we're verifying that. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2501TA.
So moved by Alessio?
All right. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
All right. Director Doring, seconds. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, perfect. Any future agenda items for the taxing authority? Don't see any. Then we're going to adjourn at 1:10 and move over to, well, the next regular meeting will be March 19th, but we're now going to move over to the Napa Valley Transportation Authority regular Board of Directors meeting. And I'll call that to order at the same time, 1:10 p.m. And suppose there's still no board members attending remotely?
No attendance remotely.
Okay. Do we need to confirm roll call, or can we just write off the last one?
I can confirm roll call was set during the NVTA-TA meeting with an absence from Director Deasy and PCC member Deborah Smith. We do have a quorum.
Ah, perfect. Thank you. Then adoption of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? All right. Can I have a motion and a second to adopt that agenda?
So moved by Alessio?
Thank you.
I'll second.
We'll give Director Manfrey credit for this one. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment on anything that isn't part of today's agenda? Or online? Okay. Then we switch to chairpersons, board members, MTC commissioners, and ABAG commissioner updates. I have a couple as chair. First of all, I want to welcome all of our new NVTA directors. It's exciting to see familiar faces, but in new roles. And in the case of Director Alessio, same face and role, just different jurisdiction. So welcome. I hope you will enjoy your time here. And if there's questions you have, you're free to call me and say, what the heck are you doing? You probably be right in wondering, or you can check with our executive director if you really want to know more technical questions. But welcome. I think you'll enjoy yourselves. That's my first comment. My second comment is that it's only appropriate to recognize our executive director when she gets kudos outside of just this circle. So I want to point out that last November, Kate received the California Transportation Association's Distinguished Service Award which recognizes individuals who've had a long and distinguished career, which you have, and in particular towards public transit. So congratulations on that. And then secondly, January of this year, Advancing Women in Transportation announced that you would be receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award for the WTS San Francisco Bay Area chapter based on your recognition. So I'd like to encourage everyone to give her a round of applause. Good job, well deserved. It is always a good thing when somebody's been around long enough and has the credibility that their accomplishments are recognized, and you will be missed in approximately, what is this, February, 4 months. So, okay. All right, I'm going to leave my comments alone. Any board member comments? Yes, Director Alessio.
Thank you. Just a quick kind of update on behalf of the county. Our Public Works Director announced that Napa County paved 42 miles of roads last year. So that's impressive. The county doesn't have the burden of complete streets that the city has, and I want to acknowledge that. The city has to do everything, curbs, gutters, the works, sidewalks, but 42 miles is a great accomplishment. And also, you might have saw in the paper that because of the February storms, yesterday at the Board of Supervisors meeting, we approved a resolution to ratify a proclamation of local emergency that caused $9.5 million of damage. And so there's lanes and streets that are out in the county. There's one that's completely out on Rossi Closed Road, on Rossi Road that's closed. Mount Veeder has 2 locations where part of the road has slipped off. The lane is closed. There's signs and there's cones. And it's unfortunate because they were just newly repaved through, I believe it was PG&E money from the fire. And then also one spot on Dry Creek Road, and there's several other locations in the county. But the emergency approval for the resolution is not going to stop the county from moving forward. We also approved to move $9.5 million from our general fund to start this work. So just want to give an update on that.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Then next to our most recent MTC commissioner, Director Manfrey, do you have any report from MTC yet?
I do not. I have not attended a meeting yet.
Fair enough. Thank you. And then perhaps our director can cover us on that.
Sure.
Anyone from ABAG before we get to your comments?
Yeah. Do we have an ABAG rep here anymore? I don't think we do.
I don't know if,
Oh.
okay.
That's gonna be, but I'm part of the general.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, well,
Then,
Selection committee, didn't we appoint Pierre and Dorian as all?
I don't know.
yeah, so,
Oh, that's good to know.
okay,
Might be having this, but we have them out sitting now.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we've got people from ABAG, so we can get coverage, but
So in the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
great.
will ask for any updates that you have. And so with that, then we'll move over to the executive director's reports.
Yeah, and just as an FYI, we NVTA staff don't follow ABAG very closely. We're really focused on MTC. But if there's anything that we can do support your updates to the board, just let us know. The commission met on January 22nd and voted in Sue Noack from Contra Costa and Stephanie Moulton Peters from Marin to chair and vice chair respectively. And they will serve a 2-year term. In addition, North Bay Commissioners Jim Spearing and David Rabbit were honored for their year serving on the commission, and most notably Jim Spearing for 38 years on the commission. And he was there when I started as an MTC staffer, as was Senator Dodd. The commission also approved the final blueprint of the Plan Bay Area 2050, and this is really just the framework for what they're going to be looking at in terms of analysis on geographies, strategies, and projects recommended. So stay tuned for that. It's not a final adoption, but it's definitely a milestone. The MTC ABAG Joint Legislation Committee released poll results for transportation revenue, a transportation revenue measure, and the poll was structured to evaluate a multi-revenue approach in 4 counties, Alameda, Contra Costa, San Francisco, and San Mateo, as well as 9 counties, which would include all of the counties in the Bay Area. The results indicated a majority support position for the latter approach, which, if supported by the commission and successfully moving through the legislature, could mean we will see a citizen initiative on the ballot for at least in 4 counties in 2026. The polling results were not strong enough to support an MTC-sponsored ballot measure. And based on previous commission discussions, the revenue measure is likely to be shaped as a 10-year measure, prioritizing transit needs in the earlier years and addressing the other transportation needs in the outer years. And the full presentation delivered to the MTC-ABAG Joint Legislative Committee may be accessed on the MTC website. I'm happy to give you that link if there's any interest. A second unveiling of the Regional Mapping and Wayfinding Project will debut in Santa Rosa Downtown Transit Mall on February 20th. The Mapping and Wayfinding Project is part of the regional network management effort to improve connections between transit systems. That first event I was honored to speak at, was at the El Cerrito del Norte station last fall. And MTC released its fund estimate. This is the document that we look to evaluate our budget and our revenue figures, especially on the transit side. That, it's roughly $1 billion region-wide. And it includes transportation development funds and state transit assistance and various bridge tolls and a bunch of other things like AB 1107, which is the BART half-cent sales tax that gets redistributed to AC Transit and Muni, cap and trade funds, state of good repair funds, and a number of other things. It also includes TDA 3, which your jurisdictions receive for bike and pedestrian funds that comes through us. And so just, the TDA is, again, a 1/4-cent sales tax statewide, and we get the amount that's generated in Napa, and state transit assistance, which is a sales tax on diesel fuel. Overall, the TDA revenue estimates are down, which is expected, over about 5% from last year. STA is down by a significant amount, 15% over last year. And for Napa, the estimates for TDA are down a little under 1%, and STA is down by 15.9%. I'm just, a cautionary word is that STA, we don't get that much money. It's like $150,000, $200,000 a year. So, and the money that we do get is based on the non-state and federal revenue. So it's a very complicated formula. So it's not a big deal for us right now. That concludes the MTC Commission report.
Okay, thank you. And then if you'd like to now move
Go
into
on.
your
Yep.
executive director report.
Sure thing. So on behalf of staff, we welcome all of our new board members and welcome back Supervisor Alessio in her new role. And we're really looking forward to working with all you and thrilled to have new members on the board. So again, welcome. The Transit Transformation Task Force, and sorry, this is going to be a little bit longer than normal because there's 4 new people on the board, and I want to make sure that they understand what the Transit Transformation Task Force is. So Senate Bill 125 requires the California State Transportation Agency to form the Transit Transformation Task Force. The task force is required to submit a report to the legislature this fall with policy recommendations to grow transit ridership, improve transit experience, and to improve transit experience for users. The secretary appointed business members, academics, transit advocates, and public transit officials. I was appointed to the task force by Secretary Omashakin last year. The task force has held 8 meetings, with the most recent held on February 5th in Riverside. At that meeting, CalSTA staff introduced a proposed outline for the report. The task force discussed proposals to achieve fleet and asset management goals, which included exhaustive feedback from public transit officials about the challenges of meeting the innovative clean transit regulation. This is the regulation that we're subject to that requires that we replace our diesel buses with zero-emission buses. And the complications associated with the lack of manufacturers and also the uncertainty of the technology. In addition, the task force discussed potential new revenue sources. There was also a significant push by some task force members to discuss congestion pricing and other transit-supported policies, factors that are known to increase ridership. And these measures have not been received enthusiastically by CalSTA, but we will continue to push on that. And it's also not supported, not surprisingly, by the business members as well. So we will continue to keep you informed on that. There's really only 2 more scheduled meetings, but we anticipate there's going to be a lot more meetings, so there's still a lot more work to be done. In your packet today, there is a list of NVTA public events, which is going to be a regular item that we hand out to you with always an open invitation to please come and represent NVTA at these events because members of the public really want to hear from you. I wanted to point out specifically some big items, the countywide active transportation plan workshop. This is the first one that we're holding for our plan, which is on February 26th at 6 o'clock at the college in the Performance Arts Center. On April 16th, the NVTA board meeting will be a retreat to kick off the countywide transportation plan. And Laura sent out an invite. It should be on your calendar. It will start at 11 and end by 3. Just so an FYI, the plan is prepared every 4 to 5 years. The framework of this plan will be to improve the connections between transportation and land use and to address greenhouse gas emissions and improve mobility for the community, for our community members. We still are looking for a location for the event, and we will keep you apprised of that information. Finally, you may recall that August of last year, Jackie Rhodes, a longtime Vine Transit rider and a committed walker, was tragically killed by a hit and run on State Route 29 near the new Vine Trail segment in North St. Helena. NVTA is dedicating a bus stop in her memory, and we invite you to attend the dedication ceremony, which will be on April 4th at 10 a.m. at the new bus stop near Freemark Abbey, which is located at 3022 St. Helena Highway. The event will begin at 10 a.m. and we will send you a notice on that. And 2 more things in your packet is our annual report. And kudos to Emily for pulling that together. It was really well done. And another shout out for her social media, which is the report also in your packet, and how much more people are paying attention to NVTA and Vine Transit. So well done, Emily. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Next, do we have a Caltrans representative online?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, good
Welcome.
afternoon. Yeah. Good afternoon, directors of the board. This is Amani from Caltrans, and I'll just go quickly through the Caltrans report. It's a very short since there's no much updates. So currently in Caltrans, we have 37 active projects. As you can see from, we have 5 in the project initiation report phase. And one of them is operational improvement in Napa 121 and Hennessy Drive in the city of Napa. In environmental phase, we have also 5 projects. No updates on that. They are all on track. On the design phase, we have 11 projects. We added only 1 project, which is mitigation biomonitoring for storm damage in State Route 29. Finally, we have construction 16 projects that are on track. So these are the 37 active projects. That doesn't include any maintenance or director orders in regarding to this report. However, I just want also to highlight that there was a verbal director order with amount of 3.25 million to address pavement and slip out repair located in Napa Highway 121, which the maintenance are working on it. So by this, I conclude my report and thank you. I'm just happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your report. Do we have any questions? Then thank you for your report.
I have a comment. I just wanted to thank Amani and her team for those of you who live up Valley are having to deal with the traffic situation around the Tunnel of Elms. And Caltrans has agreed to not work on Friday so that there is going to be a significant vintner event up there. And so just thank you, Amani, for being able to do that so quickly for us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, now I have the distinct honor of we have two presentations today, and I am happy to be part of one of them. This is an appreciation for Bill Dodd on his retirement from the State Senate. So how do we want to do this? I was going to say.
The NVTA son.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's.
Kind of the side behind.
Yeah. I'll hang on to this because I'm going to read what it says, and I haven't memorized it yet. Okay. As Bill pointed out, we do go way back, and so I am particularly honored to be the guy saying these things. We actually go back to when you were a businessman and I was a city manager in American Canyon. You received a small business loan when you were running Culligan. The good news, of course, is you paid us all back, and that's always an important perspective from my view. But then as a supervisor with Napa County, then as an assembly person, then as a state senator, you were instrumental along with Jim Spearing in getting funding for the Jamison Canyon widening, or at least I'm giving you credit for it, even if it wasn't entirely your help, but you made it happen, and I appreciate it. So like I said, I'm very happy to be the one getting to read these things for you. It says, in honor of Senator Bill Dodd, in recognition of his dedicated service to the people of Napa and the state of California, through years of unwavering commitment to improving transportation in Napa Valley, Senator Dodd has been a tireless advocate. His leadership, vision, and passion have strengthened our community, improved our environment, and supported our economy. As he retires from public service, we celebrate his profound impact and express our deep gratitude for his efforts to improve the lives of our residents, our workers, our visitors, and our businesses. Thank you, Senator Dodd, for your legacy of service and your enduring dedication to the people of Napa from NVTA.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I was just going to say I'll be brief, but then I could hear one of my kids going, "Yeah, Dad, right." Seriously, I've really appreciated this organization from the very beginning. In fact, Napa County was one of the, if not the first, one of the first that ever consolidated transit agencies, which is a good thing to do when you consider that we have 28 or 29 transit agencies throughout the Bay Area. It was, the city of Napa and all the Yountville and American Canyon, St. Helena and Calistoga and the county of Napa that got together and did the hard work. And, there was territorial issues and all those different things, but it's really, this organization has meant so much to me. This organization gave me many opportunities, and I appreciate the board members, all of you that are here today, and your predecessors over the last 25 years. And also, Kate, you and your staff, and all the staffs previous. We've been very blessed to have had some amazing executive directors and staff in this organization, as well as in the cities and in the county as well. But I just appreciate the opportunity and encourage you all just to do the work. It's a fine group of people that I see, and there's a few of you that I haven't met yet, but that I'd like to meet. But nevertheless, thank you very, very much. I consider this an honor, and hopefully, Kate, you are the last one that's going to do this to me. So I really, really appreciate it all, and also to all the advocates and staff who do so much work around here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, I do appreciate that. And now, Grant, you're going to give us a project update.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Vice Chair Doring, and directors of the board. I'm Grant Bailey, Program Manager Engineer with NVTA, and today I'll be providing a project update. Before we get into the project slides, I have an update on the Vine Trail that I don't have a slide for, but just to give you a quick snapshot of what's going on. So as of the end of January, NVTA did submit the notice of completion for that project, and we have effectively terminated the contract with Gelati Construction and brought the project to a close, which also transitioned ownership and maintenance responsibilities to the county and cities of St. Helena and Calistoga. So big milestone there. Working to just issue final payments and close out the retention balance now. There are some drainage issues on the project, which we became aware of in November and with the last series of storms. The county is taking the lead on addressing those issues, looking at near-term and long-term solutions, and NVTA is working to support the county from any way we can at this point. An update on a collision with some guardrail around Ballantine Winery just north of Deer Park Road at the end of December. A vehicle collided with some guardrail. It was repaired as of last Wednesday. NVTA is seeking compensation through the insurance claim, but good news is that is repaired. And one last thing we're checking off there. And then the PG&E claim that we have, that we've submitted to PG&E as of the end of September. Still an ongoing process with PG&E. They are reviewing the claim as we speak, but we're getting closer. We've opened up a dialogue. Haven't received any type of counteroffer at this point, but do expect to start the next phase of negotiations and have engaged our construction legal counsel to discuss next steps. So that's where we are with the Vine Trail. And if we can go to the next slide, we'll jump into the updates on the remaining projects. So the Redwood Park and Ride Improvements Project is a project to improve infrastructure at the Redwood Park and Ride at Solano and Redwood in Napa, and will improve safety and add amenities for drivers and riders. There's currently no restroom at this facility, which causes riders and drivers to use the closest facility, which is typically the Chevron across the street. And so that'll be one of the major improvements that this project aims to accomplish. And then we'll also be adding pavement striping and signage to help identify the different areas for the various modes with the Vine Trail running through there, and in the hopes of reducing conflict points between pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles, as well as transit vehicles. We'll also be updating the electronic transit information display, or ETID signs. Right now, we just completed the review of 75% design documents and expect to have 95% be completed with design by May of this year. We'll bid the project over the summer and anticipate to go into construction in the fall and complete this year. Overall project cost is approximately $1 million, with $700,000 of that being construction and $250,000 being pre-construction costs. Next slide, please. The Napa Valley Forward Oakville Cross Road project will construct a roundabout at Oakville Cross Road and State Route 29 to improve multimodal safety and operations at the intersection. MTC is the lead agency delivering this project. They obtained environmental clearance in 2024, and they are working towards final design. NVTA is working locally with property owners at the intersection to obtain right-of-way necessary to complete the project and clear the project so we can begin construction as early as spring of 2026, depending on obtaining funding for that project. Next slide, please. The SR 2912 and Airport Interchange Project is a project to reduce congestion at the current signalized intersection by reconfiguring that intersection into a grade-separated interchange, as well as adding an at-grade roundabout at Kelly Road and State Route 12. Projected costs for this project are upwards of $1 million, or excuse me, $100 million, which was $1 million. But there are various alternatives which we're considering right now that could bring those costs down. Right now, well, to give a little history on this project, when the Jameson Canyon project was cleared or obtained environmental clearance in 2008, this intersection also was cleared environmentally to proceed with a tight diamond interchange. Funding wasn't available for that part of the project at the time. So while Jameson Canyon continued with construction, this intersection or these interchange improvements were deferred. Now that we've completed Sausal Junction project, congestion has shifted south to this intersection. And NVTA is working with Caltrans to utilize that previous environmental clearance and revalidate that environmental document. But we're looking at some various options. One of those include the picture on the screen here, which is the teardrop roundabout grade separated interchange, similar to Sausal Junction. A couple of other alternatives that are on the table are an aerial overcrossing or an underground tunnel, which would provide free-flowing traffic from the southbound 29 movement to eastbound 12. But these are the early phases, and so actually in the consent calendar later today, there is a task order that staff is requesting the board approve with TY Lind to proceed with preliminary work to prepare documents that we can bring to Caltrans to receive approval to proceed with the environmental revalidation process rather than going through a brand new project delivery, which would involve the project initiation phase and then environmental and then design and right of way. We're hoping to just revalidate the environmental document and jump right into design as early as next year. Pending Caltrans approval, we're looking at a 2-year design process, 2-year design and right-of-way process. And then considering the cost of this project, we're looking at beginning construction as early as 2030, leveraging bond opportunities through Measure U, as well as other funding opportunities through grant opportunities. Next slide, please. The SR 29 American Canyon Corridor project aims to make operational and intersection improvements and add multimodal facilities along State Route 29 between Napa Junction Road and American Canyon Road. The big update here is staff and our consultant at Kimley Horn met with the American Canyon City Council earlier this month, provided a background on the project, highlighted the alternatives that were selected through the project initiation phase, which the first alternative is to improve the signalized intersections that are in the corridor now. And the other alternative is to replace the existing signalized intersections with roundabouts. We took the presentation as an opportunity to present to the council, the advantages of roundabouts and how they work and why they will work specifically in this category. Overall, I have to say that the presentation was well received, and it kicked off the public engagement phase of this project. And moving forward, we're looking to hold our first public meeting with the community and stakeholders in late March or early April. And from there, we're looking to complete the environmental phase sometime in 2026, which will allow us to move into design and right-of-way through 2028. And again, funding dependent, we could begin construction as early as 2028 on this project. Next slide, please. And then the last project I'll talk about, which is kind of a series of projects, is the Resilient State Route 37 project. So the overall project objective is to elevate a 21-mile long corridor that is State Route 37 between Highway 101 and Interstate 80 to address forecast sea level rise for the year 2130. If you look closely at that bottom right-hand photo, there at any given time, there could be up to 10 projects going along on this corridor, from minor pavement improvements to the long-term corridor elevation project. But I'll only talk about 2 of those projects. The first one will be the current project or the current activities to elevate the overall corridor, which is the planning and environmental linkages study. And then I'll also talk about the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project, which is an interim project to address some near-term needs on the corridor. Just an overall, or a reminder of the overall cost and timeline for this project. It's estimated to cost between $6 and $11 billion, with projected completion year of 2050. Next slide, please. The SR 37, or Resilient SR 37 Planning and Environmental Leakages Project or Study was initiated, or excuse me, completed in December of 2022. It defined a series of problems on the intersection, most notably significant AM and PM peak travel delay times, especially in the PM eastbound direction. Travel delay times could be up to 80 minutes. It also identified environmental issues along the corridor, as well as lack of transit options, and also established independent utility and logical termini, or in other words, it segmentalized the project into workable chunks that could be constructed reasonably with logical endpoints. And so it took it from a corridor that was cut up into 3 segments, A, B, and C, and turned it into 8 segments, 1 through 8. And then in December of 2024, the project team completed an addendum to the Pell study, which prioritized those sections. It evaluated many different factors, flood susceptibility, options, or environmental impact, or resiliency, and equity issues. The top priority section identified was section 2 in Marin on the west end of the corridor, and the second tier priority were sections 6, 7, and 4 in the center of the corridor, and then the lower tier sections were 1, 8, 3, and 5. For more information about how these sections were prioritized, I can refer you to the Pell study. It does a really good job of identifying all the different characteristics. Next slide, please. And then the last slide here I have is about the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project on SR 37. This is a near-term improvement project on the corridor, and it aims to widen the last 2-lane segment of the highway to a 4-lane segment, allowing for transit opportunities, reduce travel times, and tolling and make ecological improvements in the near term, rather than waiting upwards of 25 years for the entire corridor to be elevated. This project will bring some of those benefits forward to as soon as 2029 or early 2030. Right now, there's an environmental impact report that has been accepted. The project team is working on an amendment to that EIR, specifically to make ecological enhancements to Strip Marsh East, which will offset future environmental impacts that are expected for the overall corridor elevation. Design is expected to be complete in the summer of 2026, and construction could be complete as early as fall 2029. One of the major considerations the project team is working through right now is the Tole Creek Bridge, which is near the intersection of State Route 121 and SR 37. Originally, as part of this, the near-term project, Tole Creek Bridge was contemplated to be replaced, and then within 20 years to be replaced again, which is not a very efficient use of taxpayer funds, and it's been highlighted by many stakeholders. And so the project team is now working on a solution that would build the bridge at the long-term corridor elevation, and kind of meet in the middle and reduce future demolition of a effectively brand new structure. So we're working through that. And then the first phase, this project will be delivered in 3 phases. The first phase will be the Tole Creek Bridge and the SR 37-121 interchange improvement. Following phase 1, we'll move into phase 2, which is the eastbound 37 lane widening or lane addition, which will alleviate those PM peak hour delay times. And then phase 3 will be the westbound lane addition. Total cost for this project is estimated at $500 million. About half of that is funded, leaving an approximately $250 million shortfall. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Right, thank you. Director Alessio?
Grant, thank you for the report. Great things are happening and probably the best being the vine trail is off your desk. So again, I caught that sigh when you said it was complete. So congratulations again on that for those who are new. We could talk about it over an evening cocktail or something. But
you.
really a great task. And I'll certainly follow up with the county and see what they're doing in terms of the drainage issues since the county's taking that on. I do have a question regarding Redwood Road, the park and ride there. The electronic transit information display, does that give real-time transit updates when that bus will be there next? Because I know that's a big issue, people not knowing if they missed the bus or if the bus is late. Will it give real-time
Yes.
updates?
Yes, it will.
Great.
Yep.
That's fantastic. And then excited to see that we're gonna get one of 3 roundabouts that we talked about in Napa Forward. And Oakville is a great place to start, and I think to show proof of concept. And then I do hope we can get one down in the Yountville area by working with the landowners there, and maybe we get Director Mulder to help us with that one, because I think that will really benefit to have a roundabout there. The estimated cost, I know is looks like it's about 10 million. Is that going to be funded by the MTC funds that Director Pedrosa was able to bring on, or are we still seeking funding for this from MTC?
I believe we're still seeking funding for that. I think the funding that Director Pedrosa was able to bring on was for the design or pre-construction phases. And we
Okay.
are still looking for funding to
Because I think
construct
that's
the
about
project.
$11 million, but maybe our Executive Director Miller might know that. The MTC funding that was brought on, that MTC awarded for Napa Forward, wasn't it about $11 million?
Sorry, what was, I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry, the
Napa Forward.
Napa Forward, the MTC funding that we received for Napa Forward, wasn't it about $11 million?
It was $8 million.
It was 8
Yeah.
million. And how much of that is going towards the Oakville roundabout, since that's the one that we're able to launch? Do you
It'll be
recall?
100%. And we just applied for a build grant for $2 million, 2.5 million, 3 million.
Okay,
So, and the projects are shelf ready. We're going to move ahead with Oakville if we get the money.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you. I'm almost done. So the number one issue I heard when out there trying to share the good word about Measure U was the State Route 2912 airport intersection there. So what's exciting, and I hope maybe Barry will highlight in his notes, is that we're not wasting time in implementing the benefits to this community through Measure U. And I'm very excited about this. I think it's the top priority that I heard, that I think people experience with, last we heard over 36,000 people coming to this county every day, 30,000 leaving this county every day, and that corridor is highly, highly used, not to mention people that are passing through. So I'm really, congratulations on seeing this, getting the first step of it becoming shelf ready. In terms of the EIR, since it was back in 2008, attached to the Jameson Canyon improvement, are we anticipating any pushback from any environmental organizations, or will it be acknowledged as still being viable?
Yes, so that's one of the major considerations since the EIR was cleared in 2008. VMT became a reality. And one of the major advantages of using the existing environmental document is we can move forward without a VMT analysis. And Caltrans hasn't confirmed that approach yet, but they've asked for some supplementary information and limited evaluation to show that the project does qualify to be grandfathered in. They do have a process for that. And that's what the task order that will be in front of you under the consent agenda item. That's one of the things that our consultant will be doing.
Okay, excellent. And then my last question, and I don't want to take this from the mayor of American Canyon, our director, Washington here, but the improvements American Canyon is the second highest, one that people want to see improved. And Measure U had, through Measure U, there was advanced funding approved within that measure to address the corridor through American Canyon. Is that the funding that we'll be using as we step forward and work on the design? And then did American Canyon approve the roundabout concept, or is that still up to decision between the community and council?
Good question. So the first question, Measure U, so that is funding we will use in the pre-construction phases for design and right-of-way. Right now, we have the environmental phase completely funded through other funds, contributions from the City of American Canyon, as well as federal grants. And then there has not been an alternative selected. That's the process we're working through right now. Our consultant is finalizing traffic counts through there, through the corridor, and working on the analysis for signalization improvements versus the roundabout improvements, and we'll, as well as, environmental studies and, all the necessary requirements under CEQA and NEPA. And we'll be presenting those, I guess, the findings to the public and the elected officials to make to select a preferred alternative, and that'll work its way through the environmental, draft document and then final document. Yes.
Okay, great. And my last request is that as we improve these areas, if we can, because I believe this is part of the EIR and part of the report, is that we get updates on how we're reducing the greenhouse gases that are going through those, versus people stopping and being in congestion, how the flow is going to improve the greenhouse gas and quality of life in terms of time efficiency of getting through that area. So I think those would be great things for us to highlight as additional benefits.
Of course, and I believe one of the studies we have to complete as part of the environmental phase is a greenhouse gas analysis, making sure that we're not increasing and hopefully reducing through project implementation. And we'll be sure to share those updates as we get results on the studies.
Thank you for all that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Director Williams.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. I have a couple of questions regarding the Vine Trail up valley between Singling and Calistoga. So I know that there were a number of cost overruns or higher costs than anticipated for a variety of reasons, including, inclement weather. But we understood that one of the concerns, one of the problems was errors in engineering, the initial engineering. And I believe that our board was understood that staff was going to approach the engineering firm and seek some sort of adjustment or recovery. And I wonder if that has been resolved or is it ongoing?
So we have, at your direction, we approached the engineering firm and have been, I'm sensitive because it was a closed session item. And we are talking to them and we're asking them for a response, and we will bring that to you at the March meeting and have a closed session at that time.
Thank you on that. And then I understand that you're in communication with PG&E regarding that claim, and we don't want to compromise your discussion by any information that shouldn't be divulged right now. But can you tell us how it's going? That is, what steps are being taken? Are there letters and is there letters being exchanged? Are there responses? Is there some sense of progress, or are we going nowhere on that?
I will say that progress is limited, but we have been following up on a regular basis, more often than monthly, with the claim representative that we've been assigned. They have assured us on a number of occasions they are reviewing the claim. It is a complex claim covering multiple issues and spanning a long period of time. As we initially noted to the board, this could take up to 12 months to finalize. That claim was initially submitted at the end of September of 2024. And so I think we are making good progress, although we don't have a lot of progress to report at this time.
Thank you.
I would just add that I'm encouraged at how quickly they responded to our request, and that while it may not be perfect right now, it definitely is, I think, heading in the right direction.
And to our satisfaction up Valley, people seem to be enjoying the Vine Trail, so there's good news there. I have one other comment, however, that I'm hearing about it, which is the amazing number of signs that are placed on the Vine Trail for the benefit of those using it. That's the most sign-intensive trail that I think I've ever seen. It's not only, however, it's not only an aesthetic concern, but there is a safety issue which has come to my attention. There are stop signs along the trail intended for the use of those using the trail, cyclists most likely. And the stop signs are so similar to and so placed that to some vehicular drivers, they appear to be directed towards the vehicles on the highway. So, for example, one driver related to me about how he was coming up Valley and at Big Tree Road near the fire station. Just beyond that is a stop sign intended for the Vine Trail. And as he was coming along at 50, which is what he's supposed to be at, there in the middle of the highway was a car stopped because it understood or it believed that that stop sign, which was for the Vine Trail, was intended for the driver. So the fellow who told me the story, you know, he was driving safely and he stopped in time, but had he been, you know, looked the other way for a moment or coming too fast, we would have had a serious rear end collision. So that's at least one incident. And I myself, when I'm driving up Valley, I have to pause and think, is this sign for me or is it not? And so there is the aesthetic question, but there also is the safety issue of what I'm calling excessive signage. And so I'm hoping that that can be addressed. And unless somehow these are mandated, and I don't know about that, but if they are not, then a lot of those signs can be removed almost certainly, because people going at the rate that the cyclists are going at, or certainly pedestrians, probably don't need to know that there's a right turn coming here on the trail or a left turn, because they're not going that fast like they would be on a highway. So the signage is excessive in my opinion, and I get some feedback as well on that.
Understood, and that is feedback I have heard as well. So as far as the aesthetic question goes, I've been working with the Vine Trail and the county on this, as well as the design engineer, to determine if the signs are required or if there's a way we can dial those back. And I think we've identified up to 80 signs that actually can be removed, as specifically those that say like yield ahead, a cautionary sign like that, a stop ahead, and 50 or 100 feet from that yield sign, which is clearly visible. So there are efforts underway to reduce the number of signs that are out there. I don't know if yes, there will be a sign reduction. I'm sure you'll see actually as we move into the spring here, that effort moving underway. And then as far as the safety aspect, I know exactly the location you're talking about, and there are a couple of other locations as well. The challenge with the project being so close to the roadway and it having many driveways, agricultural accesses that might be using the road, or excuse me, the trail. The decision was made to use a larger sign when we had the option to use a smaller sign, and now that the trail is in operation, we are finding that the smaller sign is better. It causes less confusion, and actually today that sign at the Cal Fire Station just north of Big Tree was switched out from a 30-inch to an 18-inch stop sign. And there are other instances, specifically on Dunwheel Lane, where we changed the sign size, rotated the signs slightly. At Cal Fire, it's difficult there because the highway and the trail effectively perfectly align, but there are efforts being made to address those areas of confusion and attempt to mitigate or make changes. So it
sounds like you're on it. I appreciate that. The signs that were initially on the trail were so similar, if not identical, to standard stop signs on the street that it was confusing, and signs that are much smaller, sounds like you're going in that direction, even different color. But I understand why you have to have the stop sign there. That's, that I understand that. But smaller, maybe different color, maybe not octagonal. At any rate, a different configuration, so they're not so similar, would be, I think, important for safety on that trail.
Yes,
Thank you for addressing that.
you're welcome.
Okay, Director Eisberg.
Fortunately, I don't have to repeat some things. Director Williams covered the same financial concerns I had in progress towards that. By the way, thank you for all the work you've done on the Vine Trail. I still ride it, rain or shine. I have a question about a completely different section of it. First of all, the park and ride a restroom there is really a good idea. And I was just wondering, who provides that single porta potty that is further down as you approach Napa on the Vine Trail?
Yeah.
Somebody does.
The Vine Trail Coalition is what it sounds like.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Director Narvaez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The 37, that's a monster project, and I recognize the importance of that. The cost of that, I mean, it's in the B, right? The billions. Can you highlight what are the anticipated funding sources? I might have missed it, but I know this is multi-jurisdictional, just kind of get a general idea of what the sense is of where the revenue may come from.
Sure. I think, well, anywhere we can find it is kind of the broad way to answer that. Considering the timeline between now and when we plan to start, major portions of construction of the project, I think it's hard to say, but, considering we have tolling revenues that as soon as the Sears Point to Mare Island project is completed, we'll start generating. Those revenues will go into the project. I think we'll be looking at local, state, regional funding, and certainly federal funding. Yeah, I don't think I have that much better of an answer.
It's a little soon, I understand. Thank you.
All right, I just had a couple of follow-up questions. For the SR 2912 airport interchange, on the environmental impact review, if we are looking at significantly different configurations than the tight diamond, does that impact the EIR revalidation effort, or are they more focused on the biologicals and not so much the engineering?
That's one of the areas we're looking to get some clarification on with Caltrans, and so we're going to prepare a VMT analysis, updated project description, and a project layout area for probably 2 or 3 different alternatives. The tight diamond and the roundabout grade separated interchanges are fairly similar from several respects. When you start getting into a tunnel option or an aerial overpass, I think those start to diverge from the tight diamond, but they still have some similarities. So I think that's what we're looking for clarification on from Caltrans, is if this alternative is acceptable to be a candidate for revalidation, or if we would have to go through an entirely new environmental review for that alternative.
Okay, thank you. And then on the Vine Trail, and I'm not a traffic engineer, even though I have a driver's license, on the stop sign, there may be a smaller sign will do the trick, but is there a way the Caltrans can put some signage on 29 that more or less says no stop sign ahead or something to that effect? Again,
Maybe.
yeah.
You kind of get into the area of sign fatigue again.
Yeah, okay.
And it's hard to manage one facility and tell another facility not to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's hope that the different signage sizes will do the trick. So, okay, well, thank you. That was my contribution to solving board's problems. Any other comments before we move on to consent? Any comments from the public or online? All right, well, thank you for the update. It's exciting to see projects are moving forward and that the Vine Trail is done. Oh,
Chair, we
wait,
do have one
we do-
public comment.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Ashley Tencher. I'm a member of the CAC committee. Happy to be participating on the board. Just like to clarify that an ETID will provide real-time where's my bus information for riders if a bus is GPS visible, which would mean that all aspects of the CAD AVL system are operable and in operation, including a driver sign-in. So currently only about half the buses are actually visible. So only half the buses right now, if we had this technology, would be accurate for the rider experience. So I'm a frequent rider, and it's really, really important that we have all these downstream real-time information, but it all gets driven by the work that Rebecca and her team are doing to have it be GPS visible. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good point. Okay, then if there are no other comments, we'll move to the consent calendar. We have a number of items. Do I have a motion to, well, does anyone wish to pull an item from the consent? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
All right.
Eisenberg?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of saying, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then we are moving on to our regular agenda items, number 11.1, which is the annual audit. Tony, take it away.
Sure. So good afternoon, Chair Joseph and members of the board. My name is Antonio Honorado, and I'm the Director of Administration and Finance for NVTA. So for this item, staff is asking the board to accept and file the financial statements with the independent auditor's report for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2024 and 2023, which is attachment number 2, and the NVTA single audit report of uniform guidance for the year ended June 30th, 2024, which is attachment number 3. Prepared a brief presentation for the board. And also 2 is to return an allocation surplus of $1,816,786 to local transportation fund, trust fund. So for this presentation, the memo itself takes a deeper dive into the agency's financial position. But for the new board members, just want to give you a little bit of background information. NVTA is comprised of 3 fund sources. We have a general fund, which we also call the CMA, or the Congestion Management Agency, and everything in our little ecosystem has 3 names attached to it. We also have the transit fund, and we also oversee a fiduciary fund called the Transportation for Clean Air, or the TFCA. This presentation speaks to the general fund and the transit fund. The TFCA fund is a pass-through fiduciary fund which the agency oversees but doesn't directly affect the agency's operations. So for the next slide, please. So this slide provides a very high-level overview of the agency's financial position over the 3 previous fiscal years. Now, I know all of you have read the financial statements from front to end, so you're very aware involved in the agency's finances. But for the new board members, this is a brief overview showing that for the last 3 fiscal years, the agency itself increased its total revenues, it also increased its expenditures, and it also has increased its net position. As you can see in the second column for the fiscal year ending 2024, the agency generated more revenues, had more expenses, and increased its net positions. We'll get a little bit into the deeper aspects to that in the next few slides. But basically the takeaway for this slide is the agency itself has increased its net financial position by nearly $7 million, which is the very last amount that you see there in the column. And the main reason, and then previous to that, agency's assets increased by $5.5 million. The main reason behind that is adding the Vine bus maintenance facility as the agency's premier asset, which construction on that commenced in January 2022. And as you all know, we had the ribbon cutting back in March 2024. Next slide, please. This is where we're going to get a little bit deeper into the specific funds, namely for us, the Congestion Management Agency, which is our general fund, which is financial transactions mainly related to the transportation side of the agency itself. As you can see from fiscal year 2024, the general fund significantly increased its revenues and expenditures. This is because of the Vine Trail project. This is a project that we delivered, but it's not an agency asset, so it doesn't reside on another part of the financial statements itself. And for our purposes here, for financial purposes, we generate revenues and then we also have basic expenditures. I want to also point out that the change in fund balance, you see for fiscal year 2024, it's actually a negative $704,000, which means that the agency had a net deficit of its financial position for the year. The main reason to that, as you all know, is we paid a claim to Gelati Brothers for the Vine Trail for cost overruns and delays related to that project. What you don't see here is the claim that we submitted to Pacific Gas and Electric. Because that claim is still pending, we're going into another phase in that claims process. The outcome of that claim is uncertain. And unless it's measurable, we can't recognize it on our financial statements. It may not be recognized for another 12 months based on our current path trajectory and negotiations. So that is out there. It could be favorable towards us. It could be zero. It could be, but hopefully we have a more favorable amount sometime in the future. Next slide, please. Well, to go back to that slide. So without that claim, without that $1.1 million, we would actually had a surplus for the year of about $400,000. So there's one primary reason why it went negative for the year. Next slide, please. So this is just an illustrative pie chart of where we get the revenues and what we did with those revenues in terms of expenditures. In terms of the revenues, the largest chunk of that pie chart is state and regional funding. That's the grants for the Vine Trail, as well as the contributions from the county, city of St. Helena, and the city of Calistoga for the Vine Trail itself. On the other side of that coin, we have professional services, which means we pay the consultants and we pay the construction contractor for the Vine Trail, as well as other transportation projects and other transportation-related programs. As you can see here, total revenues came in at just under 15 million. Total expenditures came in a little bit over 15.5 million, 15.6 million. And as I mentioned, we had a net decrease of 704,000, primarily because of those legal fees associated with the settlement of Gelati Brothers, Gelati Construction. Next slide, please. We always talk about for the long-term liabilities for the general fund. In this case, we talk about pension funding and we talk about other post-employment benefits. For the pension funding, for the CalPERS pension funding, we are what I would consider fully funded. We meet all our obligations for the year. We are about 73% funded in terms of our actual our liability, which is actually a good position. The statewide average is about 70%, so we're a little bit better than the statewide average. That really hasn't moved year over year. So we are actually in a good position. What we don't want to do is kind of overfund the pension liability because that cash outlay can be used for something more cost effective if we use that money for today rather than 30 years into the future. So having a 73% pension funding is actually a fairly decent position for the agency itself. In terms of the OPEB funding, the other post-employment benefits, we are fully funded. This previous year, the earnings we've always had positive earnings since the inception of when we established the OPEB fund back in 2011. This past year, we took a little bit of a hit, and that's because of the stock market, just the volatility in the stock market. That's expected to flip this year because the stock market has been doing better this year as opposed to last year. So it is still fully funded. We actually have not had any disbursements out of the OPEB fund, although we have 3 active retirees. The benefit costs that we pay for those benefits is under $20,000, so we use general fund money to pay for those benefits rather than going towards the OPEB trust fund. So at some future point, when the costs outweigh what we're able to provide with general fund revenues, then we will go ahead and start dispersing OPEB funds out of that for the retirees as well. Next slide, please. So this is a very detailed look at our transit fund and the expenses related to the transit fund itself. As you can see here, our fare box did increase year over 2023. Our expenses also increased in 2024 over 2023, primarily because of the purchase transportation contract and the fuel costs. And then we also accumulated, we also had non-operating revenues, which is basically our other funding sources for operating assistance for the transit system. And then we accumulated some capital funds because of the Vine bus maintenance facility. Overall, I don't know if you can see it there, it's kind of blocked, but we did accumulate a net surplus of about $7.7 million for the transit fund itself. Again, that's mainly due to the bus maintenance facility becoming a fixed asset. Next slide, please. This is another visual pie chart of where the transit revenues come from versus where they go. For the most part, most of the money came from state and regional sources. And again, that's from actually Regional Measure 3 for the bus maintenance facility, as well as TDA and state transit assistance. And then as well as state transit assistance. We have TDA comprises about 30% of funding the transit operations, and federal sources is about a quarter of the pie. And then we have fare box. Overall, fare box is about 4% for the entire system. When you get into Vine Transit, it's obviously much higher. And then you get into shuttles, it's a little bit lower. It's about 10% for the shuttles. For Vine Transit, it's running about 14%. When you do the calculations. It's still a little bit under the 15% threshold, the minimum that MTC and the TDA law requires, but we do have those waivers for at least another year. So, we're making great efforts, and I think Rebecca will provide some commentary of the status of the transit system as of today and what efforts we're going to make for the future to regain those ridership. On the other side of that coin, we have expenses, purchase transportation of fuel, comprises of the lion's share of our transit operations. If you take out depreciation expense, purchase transportation of fuel is closer to about 90% of our total operations, total expenses for operating the Vine Transit system. We have about 7% for administration and personnel costs specifically for the transit system. We have about up to 3 dedicated personnel at the agency dedicated for Vine Transit as well. And as I said, we had a net increase of $7.8 million almost, and that's because mainly due to converting the bus maintenance facility into an asset for the agency. Next slide, please. So these are some of the capital investments that occurred for the last fiscal year, about $11 million total. A majority of that was for the Vine bus maintenance facility, adding that as an asset. We made some investments in the mobile park and ride, continued investments in the mobile park and ride, electrification, and we got those used buses from down in Southern California. That was about $1.6 million, and transit-related equipment, about $2 million overall. So about $11 million totals in transit-related investments. And just to conclude, the management letter from our auditors shows that there was no findings or recommendation. This is kind of a testament to that we have strong internal controls, we have adequate segregation of duties, and we're financially transparent. So business as usual, and I don't think there's anything negative to say about that. And that, I think, concludes my report, and I will try and answer any questions you may have.
All right. Well, Tony, thank you very much. In effect, we got a clean audit essentially, which is what we always want to hear, and it's glad that you could deliver it. We do have some questions.
I do. Just a quick question. Thank you for your report. Under miscellaneous expenses, there was an increase there. Just curious, as a new director here, what generally goes under miscellaneous expenses?
The miscellaneous expenses, it's a batch of different expenses, and I would have to go in there and see what the changes are. So that's something I can get back to you on specifically.
That would be great.
What the changes were for that.
Okay, Director Williams.
Thank you. So we have a transit fund, which is showing a income and expense of approximately $18 million or so on the slide. And then there's colloquially called a general fund, which is showing a $15 million budget or so. Can you help me understand what the difference between the activities that are in the transit fund compared to those which are in, I forget the name, what was called it?
The CMA, the Congestion Management Agency?
Yeah.
So the Congestion Management Agency is our general fund. That's where all the agency's operations reside, where all our personnel costs reside. and the agency's transportation-related programs. So Vine Trail, anything not transit-related, so anything that has to do with the Vine, American Canyon, Calistoga Shuttle, St. Helena Shuttle, or the Yountville B, that's all public transit. So that's a transit fund financial budget. Everything on transportation, Vine Trail transportation program, state routes to schools, anything non-transit related is a general fund program or cost, financial cost.
Would that include capital projects as well?
Capital projects go into the transit side.
Oh, okay.
So capital projects, the bus maintenance facility, and purchasing of buses and transit equipment. Those capital investments are on the transit side because they're specific to transit.
And all of the staff is on the congestion management agency side, and we charge back to the transit system. So that's why that looks heavier for those people who work on the transit system, which is we have 3 dedicated staff, and then all of us have a part of our FTE assigned to that as well. Or not all of us, but a lot of us.
Thank you.
Oh, Director Alessio.
Just 2 quick questions, and Rebecca may be, the one to answer these in her presentation that's coming up here soon. But in looking at the transit fund fare box, it's great to see it's increasing. Historical difference, do you know where we are if we pre-COVID, how we looked in 2019 compared, because I know it's been hard to bring ridership back through, all transit organizations have been having a hard time with this. But how does it compare? How are we doing?
I think in 2018, the last fiscal year before COVID,
Yeah.
we were slightly above $1 million.
How much?
$1 million. I think it was $1 million,
Okay.
$11,000. So we're not that far off. We recovered, at least financially, we recovered for the fare box close to pre-COVID levels. But I will also preface that the fare box for this year includes much more advertising revenue than it did for pre-COVID. So right now, our advertising revenue in this last fiscal year was about $108,000. Pre-COVID, our advertising revenue was closer to like $56,000, $57,000. But because we are slowly recovering in terms of our passengers, that is being reflected in the fare box amount as well.
So 1 million today is different than what 1 million meant in 2018. So you'd add inflation, or what would you add to kind of give us real numbers for today?
I would probably include an inflationary factor as well.
Include the inflation
Yeah.
factors to kind of get the real equal value?
This does not, the 979,000 does not include the fare box increase that was approved by the board. That became effective on July the 1st. So we'll see what that result looks like in this next audit.
Okay.
So it's just basic, we've been running at $1.60 for an adult fare, for 10 years now. And so that is the most recent fare box is just a regrowth of the passengers that we're getting back into the system.
Perfect. And then my last question is, and Executive Director Milder might be able to help with this too. I'm not sure if this is in your area, but I know we're still waiting for buses. I think there's like 11 buses. We have a fleet, 14
buses.
because you got the grants for all those.
Yes.
Congratulations again on that. Thank you for doing that. So 14 buses. And as the anticipated savings in fuel that we can anticipate, do you have an estimate of what that might look like?
It should be about half. It should be.
Okay. Great.
It's hard. Right now we have 7 electric buses but we haven't seen those fuel savings materialize just yet. We have very little data still. When we do get the 14 buses, it means we'll have at least 21 buses, electric buses, and our main fleet is comprised around 45 heavy-duty vehicles. So we'll see if there is a materialized savings in fuel costs. It's still going to be fuel, except it's going to be electricity as a fuel rather than diesel or unleaded as a fuel.
Correct.
And then we'll see what the kilowatt hours are and if we're going to realize the real savings. Now, that being said, we also are getting solar panels.
Correct.
We
I was
also
gonna say, where's the solar?
Our PVS is not live yet.
Yeah.
So,
And we do have some net metering programs with PG&E that haven't come online just yet as well. So with all those factors involved, we'll see if there's we'll see what the savings differential is.
So I'm asking these questions because my hope and desire is that with increased rate, I mean, fare box, which I know is only 4% right now, and increased savings, that maybe we can increase our transit in terms of, frequency and our operations. So that's kind of my hope. If the finances are there to support it, do you think that's a path forward, or do we have to look at another way to financially support
I think it's still too early
higher
to tell.
contact
I
of
think it's
transit?
it's still too early to tell.
Okay.
We're undertaking some long-term financial planning and actually working with our transit manager to relook at some of the long-term financial forecasts to see if we need to revise those or if, it's business as usual at this point in time. So it's something we can probably report back at another time just to see, where we think we're going to land in a future period.
Okay, very good. Congratulations on the no audit, and thank you to marketing. I think that's a good investment.
Right, thank you. Director McGee-Cant.
Thank you. My question is a relatively small number, but on the operating expenses, as you're looking at more buses coming online and then Director Alessio's goals of more frequencies, how are you doing staffing wise?
I think our staffing is still, we're at a good capacity right now. We grow as we need to grow, and we ask for additional staffing when we think there is need.
So
But for now, I think our staffing is.
That number is pretty
accurate.
accurate.
Mhm.
And do they have any post employment benefits that would show up on this anywhere, or is it totally
She's
different?
talking about contracted services now.
They're
Contracted.
contracted?
Yeah.
Oh, oh.
So we just have one contract amount.
Okay.
And all the benefits associated with that contract would be just included in that number. And so they are getting benefits. So you're talking about the drivers, the
Mhm.
mechanics,
Yeah.
supervised road soups, stuff, yeah.
Since they make the buses run. So thank you very much.
All right. If there are no other questions from I was going to say, if there aren't any from the board, we'll check real quick. Any public comments? All right. Don't understand it. When we're talking budget and finance and accounting, you'd think everybody would be lining up asking, but
They all read it, so.
no, that's right. That would explain it. Okay. Then if there are no other questions, and Director Williams' light is on just because.
Motion to approve,
All right.
receiving the report?
Good call. Thank you. We have a motion and a second, I'll bet. Okay. So a motion from Director Williams, second from Director Narvaez, and I'll keep working on it. Okay.
Question on that motion, does that include the return of the allocation of the surplus of 1.816?
Yes, I mean, it's both.
Okay.
Is that in the motion? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion second for the audit and the return of TDA money or LTF money. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right. We're good to go on that. And we're now ready to get a Vine Transit update from Rebecca Schenk.
Hello, Chair Joseph, members of the board. My name is Rebecca Schenk. I'm the transit manager here at the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. I'll be going through an update on the quarter most recent, which is October through December of 2024, similar to our finances, right? We start July 1 of a given year and then end on June 30th. So everyone kind of matches up in that way. Typically, you get this update maybe in the January timeframe. We have this later board meeting. So we're just giving you a little bit retroactively. So if you flip to the next slide, we're going to touch on a couple of different things, including recent schedule changes, and then we'll end with bus stops, which was a request at our last meeting from our board members. Moving on, and you can skip 2 slides here. What we're going to talk about is these recent schedule changes. There were really 2 significant changes. One, we had been operating an on-demand service that we maintained in the Browns Valley area that was a remnant of COVID. We made the decision to make that last transition from on-demand to fixed route that started on January 12th. I think that's been going relatively positively in terms of change in ridership, and we'll report back at the end of this next quarter on what that looks like in terms of passengers per revenue hour. On the next slide, you see with the Route G, we extended it to what we're calling the Napa County Saw School campus, right there, kind of with the star. There's a new traffic light there, and that enabled us to go up to that campus. On the next slide, you'll see what that means. And this is kind of important because if you imagine there are 3 main county offices, there's essentially downtown, there is now this Saw School campus, and then there's Health and Human Services there at the bottom of the slide. On this Route G, just through the last 30 days and that change, we have about 105 daily riders. And then specifically wanted to call out these 3 locations since we are kind of meshing together these different county services and getting people from A to B. And one of the most positive things had been like, oh, we're no longer having people, or at least not as many, walking around along State Route 29 to get up to probation. So that was one of our second major change there. Then on the next slide, just outreach efforts, and it'll touch base. On the next slide, we have some nice pictures. We were in the city of Napa's Christmas parade, holiday parade. We had a really great time there and loved passing out things. And it just touches base at some other events that we attended. And if there are events in your jurisdiction you'd like us to come and table during the day, on the weekends, etc., please let us know. And the next thing on the kind of outreach I want to touch on is we are sponsoring on that next one a design of the Vine bus. So as Director Alessio had mentioned, we are getting 14 new buses. 12 of them will have kind of our standard design, but 2, we went out for a call for artists. That closed. We had 24 artists submit. We're kind of selecting 3 to move forward with the idea that we'll select 2 final designs. And then thanks to Deborah Smith on PCC and Ashley Tenscher from CAC for helping us on the committee and making those selections. That'll be fun to see what the result is there. Then what everyone wants to talk about in terms of ridership updates. So on the chart on the next slide, basically what you're going to see is the second quarter, so October through December, and basically the last 5 years. So kind of that local on-demand touches on the city of Napa. And right, the bars there on local on-demand, Route 10 and Route 11, sensibly show each quarter over the past 5 years that we've seen an increase. Meanwhile, on more of these commuter routes, this 11X, 21, 29, our ridership has remained relatively flat, and we've never quite seen kind of the return to office. These are routes that really focus on that morning and evening commute, and people who are going to out to Contra Costa, Solano, Alameda, San Francisco, et cetera. We've never seen a significant increase in those since COVID. And then I broke it down a few other ways. This is the same data on the next slide. And this just gave you, just in this past quarter, for example, just a breakdown of where passengers get on your average weekday. And so I want to contrast this with obviously, and it's the city of Napa, the most individuals, and that's where we're seeing the most ons and offs. Kind of what follows that is Solano County, so people getting on in Solano County, coming to work in Napa, and then kind of these unincorporated areas as well, people that might getting on at the Calistoga Farm Worker Center or at Oakville, at Rutherford. And the next slide, what it does, though, is kind of changes it in terms of, okay, it's looking at the passengers, right, and the city of Napa stuck out so widely. But when you look at the average miles on the weekdays, you still have Napa at the top there. But what this does show is American Canyon, while it might be low in terms of what passengers get on, we're taking those people far. We're taking them to El Cerrito del Norte. We're taking them to the ferry. And then unincorporated Napa there moving up to like a kind of a second position from having been one one of the lowest, because people that are getting on an unincorporated Napa are going on average of 30 miles on any kind of given trip, whereby someone in the city of Napa, right, is going maybe a short few mile distance. So all this to think, sometimes you might think the jurisdiction you're representing, and this is just on fixed route, not including the shuttles, might not have as high of ridership, but we are taking them far, which is also an important factor to consider. And then on the next slide, again, we're going to look at passengers, and then we're going to look at miles. And this is just broken down by supervisory district, for example, right? You can break these down in any number of ways, but you'll see District 1, right, which has some of the highest local ridership routes on the B and C, and a lot of people getting on the 10 and 11, and those locations, right, really has kind of those highest passengers. But when you flip it to the next slide and you look at the miles that they're going, right, you know, District 1 moves down maybe to that fourth position. Meanwhile, District 5, again, in American Canyon, kind of being consistent with what we saw when we broke it down by jurisdiction, they're traveling far, as we mentioned. And then as well in District 3 in that Up Valley, which is incorporating part of the unincorporated area, as well as St. Helena and Calistoga, we're also taking those riders significant distances on a daily basis. So those are just some different breakdowns on the fixed route. On the next slide, you'll see kind of the breakdown on our on-demand services. So this is our shuttles, VineGo being our ADA paratransit service, and we're seeing more and more of those riders come out quarter over quarter, as well as in American Canyon Transit. I think where we need to focus is our recent drop over the second quarter in Calistoga. We will be getting a new shuttle that'll be operational there in March with new branding, and we hope to kind of drive some ridership from there. And then in terms of Yountville, we'll be doing some outreach events coming up here in the next 2 weeks at the Veterans Home, because that often drives the ridership from there to get maybe some people who had maybe been tentative post-COVID back on that Yountville B. And then finally, looking at overall, because right, we're looking at the last 5 quarters and things are positive, and this just gives you overall in terms of total ridership change, what we're looking at, and particularly just that second quarter. So each quarter we see a gain each since COVID and its peak maybe in fiscal year 2021, but we still are trying to get back to a pre-COVID level. Then finally, that covers ridership. Just to touch briefly on CAT AVL, and you'll see on the next slide kind of what are we doing to get more of that real-time information accurate for you. So we are getting access to new data from Cal ITP, which is essentially the Caltrans's version of IT for transit. And so we are seeing, you know, like one day I picked out there December 1st, you know, 69.93% of our trips are reporting regularly in real time. And so really getting that data daily and trying to improve that, and ways doing it, say when we got the new to us CNG buses, or when we have some new VineGo buses that are getting CAT AVL installed, we're replacing routers that may be 5 to 6 years old, which for some items is not a long time, but in router time, it's a significant period. And so we'll hope to ramp that up from there. And then the final thing, and we'll make this brief on bus stops. I probably won't go through all of this, but as this was a requested item, as you'll see on the next slide, we are basically operating 351 bus stops throughout our system. We have 59 shelters. And I guess kind of what this question was getting at in a way of like, okay, some shelters are owned by NVTA, say the ones you would see outside here if you were exiting the building. Others in the town of Yountville, for example, are owned by the town of Yountville, and they had a particular design intent, and we've been consistent with that. Others say, or maybe in a Caltrans's right away, or might be owned by another jurisdiction. So there is a lot of variety within our bus stops. And then we won't go through kind of the next 5 slides for time purposes, but what it looks like is we do have a bus optimization and maintenance plan, and that just shows here that we look at spacing is an important component. On the next slide, you'll see what else is an important component is like bus stop process for potential elimination that we have outlined. And then on the following slide, how we maybe could determine if we were going to add a shelter to an existing stop and what our thresholds might be for that. And finally, on the next slide, with any stops that we're adding, we need to take into consideration the American with Disabilities Act, particularly Title II and Title III. So sometimes it's like, oh, we'd love to put maybe a new stop, say, let's say on Route 29 between St. Helena and Calistoga. But if it's not possible to put in the necessary infrastructure under the ADA Act, we wouldn't be able to do that. And sometimes it's not just our stop, but right, how you would lead to the next set of intersections. It could become a pretty major infrastructure project for us. And finally, on the bus stop basics, just to give you a sense, so, you saw Tony's overall budget, but in the 2-year budget moving forward for 24, 25, 25, 26, right, we have about $200,000 allocated for bus stop improvements. At this point, we're focusing on kind of 2 of our major routes, routes B and C, and some replacements of shelters there. And then we'll have to look at what makes sense in the next round, but it's a relatively small part of our budget, and we're not looking at something where we could do, at least budget-wise at this juncture, a full overhaul on that. And then the final thing was just tied to the solar project. So we had a solar project through a power purchase agreement separate from our bus maintenance facility. We're nearing completion. You can see the solar panels there, but they are not tied into the overall system. And that will be enough power to kind of power our maintenance facility and operations like the building themselves, but this does not charge our buses. So we'll still be charging off the grid for that. So it won't affect those fuel costs per se, but helps our overall bottom line in terms of the PG&E costs related to our buildings. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Right, thank you. Rebecca, on the solar project, so what you said, we're not looking at fueling our buses yet, but that is potentially down the road since we acquired the additional land. So it's something that could happen.
Yeah, and we could look at different microgrid options. I think what might make the most sense, and we'll see, we're just in initial conversations with the Napa Sanitation that owns the property nearby. But if you're familiar with that organization, they are putting in a major solar project over a set of ponds. So there might also be a way to use their solar power where they have an excess. So we just have 1 megawatt to do our buildings, but they have many times larger system. And could we be charging off of that at their adjacent parcels? So we're also exploring that. So continued discussion, but just want to, whatever, be realistic about our current expectations is the 1 megawatt system will cover our buildings, but not our buses.
Okay, perfect. Well, it's good that you're working with the other jurisdictions. So thank you. We do. I'm going to start with Director Williams this time.
Thank you. There's a slide which I'm sorry I don't understand the meaning of total average miles. Could we pull that one back up again? And I'm not sure what we're talking about.
Yeah,
And that,
so
and how do you, and how do you measure what it's showing? So if you could tell me about that, I'd appreciate it.
So it takes basically 2 factors into account. It looks at, so if you got on the bus and it is the 13th slide, Laura. So let's just say you were in Calistoga, right? And you were one of the 57 people that on a daily basis get on the Route 10 in Calistoga. So that meant we know where you got on and where you kind of like got off, for example, right? So depending on where you got off, we know how many miles you traveled. And so if you went to St. Helena, for example, what's that? 10 miles? You know what I mean? Something like that, 9. So that's the average miles that would be traveled within the day.
So how do you know where somebody gets off?
Yes. So when you get on the bus, there is basically 2 rays of light. So when I get on, it counts me if I break the first laser and then the second laser. That counts as an on. And so when you get off, you break the second laser and then the first laser. And then that tells me that's where you got off. Now, I don't know that it was necessarily you who got, you know what I mean, on and off at what location, but it can tell you who got, you know what I mean, who got on and off. And so that's how I can see the average miles that any one person does in the day. And then I can sum that up to the total mileage for the day of those individuals.
So it indicates the total miles traveled by all passengers in that time.
On a given day. Yes, on a weekday in this case.
Weekday. Thank you.
Director Narvaez.
Thank you. Rebecca, thank you for that information.
Yeah.
When talking about the fixed route total average passengers, I do see some, some low ridership but high mileage, and then vice versa. Is there a matrix to identify like where's the where we're recovering the cost and where we're, maybe
Yeah, I think we
where
could.
is costing more for that ridership?
Sure. I think we could give you a breakdown by route, and a lot of it has to do with, right, it's, I guess, two factors. It's the number of riders and then how far that mileage that they're going. So I don't have that broken out by route here. Generally, I think if I gave you it, the number one most efficient route for us is the Route C, which travels Redwood Road, does the turnaround at Rolfs Manor, comes Jefferson and back to here because it's relatively short in distance and has a lot of riders, right? So that kind of works out nicely for us, but that's something we can present next time.
And the reason I brought it up because in the last report, when it was evident when we raised advertisement that the fare increase. So by identifying some of these areas where we know we're going far, but maybe increasing advertising in certain those routes, we may be able to get more ridership. And then on the last question on the breaking the line to identify riders. So riders are using a card, right, to check in, to get on the bus, right? Do they ever check out to identify the on and off?
The way the Clipper system is set up, they don't say click on and off. So that's why I'm not relying on like the fare data in particular to say when they gone on and off. I'm relying on this, it's called this automated passenger counter system. Because yes, they're not hitting their Clipper card or any other fare card on the way out, only on the way in.
Wonder if that's something that it might be too complicated, but if you do it on the way out, it might give us more data. But I don't know if that's even something that people will do on a consistent basis, but just a thought.
Yeah, it gets tricky. I know BART does that because it's set up in terms of the gates, but I'm not aware of another bus system. We can look if there's an option, but thus far, I'm not aware of one.
Just, I like data, so
Yeah, it would be fun to know, right? Like in terms of the transfers too, because sometimes you don't know, that there are transfers, right, from one route to another, but you can't track that individual person, right? Or, through their Clipper card as to where they transfer exactly.
And I would just add that the Clipper card saturation in our system is really small compared to, say, BART and SMART, where the rail systems have to use 100% or are using 100% Clipper. Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Alessio.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. It's really helpful. It's great to see that there's 351 bus stops on the Vine Transit System. I had no idea it was that many. And 59 have shelters. Based on a similar area, how do we fare? I mean, is that really good? Are we giving ourselves a B, a C, an A? How does that fare? How does it fare? I mean, compared from jurisdiction to jurisdiction with a similar area?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's obviously like every stop in San Francisco is going to have a shelter because you're going to have a good threshold and they control the street and the transit system, right? So they've got kind of a good setup. We could look at something. We'll take a look at like Sonoma, for example, and see where they're looking because they have that mix of, rural and urban, and I'll let you know.
Okay, great. Because I would like to see how we compare to like areas, both in the number of stops we have and the number of shelters we have. I want to commend Yountville because they've got great shelters. And I would like to put a little bit of a push for the other jurisdictions if they're, if that's an area where we need to seek funding, it's not through NVTA, but it's through the individual jurisdictions, that we have a plan to work on that. We know what the needs are. We kind of a strategic plan, I guess, on increasing the number of bus shelters. I think it's really important, especially with this day and age of more rain and more heat, more wind. I think it's important. Earlier, it was mentioned that only 50% of our buses had the CAD program. Is that accurate? And then how do we increase that?
Sure. So a greater portion of our buses have that overall system. It's saying like on any given route on any given day. So the one that I showed and I'm, was looking at, say, December of 2024, say our best day is 69.93%. That means like of the trips. So if a bus is running all day, it could show up, right, 7 times, but not 3 of them or something for a variety of reasons. So this is new data that we haven't had access to before. And so that's how we're going to track that. And we can report back to that regularly in terms of what is actually reporting back to the audience, the customers in real time.
Yeah, that's really important that we have that communication information with the riders. It provides them the reassurance and certainty, and so they do want to take the bus, take that chance.
Sure.
A quick share is I ran into a young man who's a musician, lives in Napa,
Nice.
and his family spent many years in Italy. And I'm not sure why that makes him such a good writer. Maybe culturally that makes him a good writer. But he leaves Napa at least 4 days a week on a bus, gets onto BART and attends Berkeley, and then comes back again. And it's just the way of life for him. And I'm just like, well, we need more of you. His name is Benito. So I have his phone number if you want him for an advertisement. But because I thought, I'm going to get your number, Benito. I love this story because I don't hear enough of the writer's stories, and especially of that generation. So I just want to share that positive news. And again, just really wanting to increase the ridership, the public transportation, the touch we have in this community, the frequency, and how we might be able to do that. I know the state, there's a fiscal cliff with public transit. Do you know how that's looking, and is there going to be a solution to this?
Yeah, I mean, can't talk to it, you know what I mean, in terms of statewide, but what we're looking is we've always tried to stay, and you saw in Tony's presentation today, kind of within our budget, right? We adjust the amount of service, the amount of budget that we have. So we don't have a precipitous cliff that I'm going to say, oh, you know what I mean, in 6 months, we're going to, you know what I mean, go off, because we've kind of adjusted our service accordingly. But it does matter to us, right, how BART or how Solano or something is doing as well. And so I think Kate's works on the Transit Transformation Task Force, and our MTC representatives and things like that can look at how, the overall system that we feed into can be funded to help us. But ourselves, we're not facing that same cliff that you read about from others.
Thank you. It's good to know.
Thank you. Director Smith.
Rebecca, I just wanted to say, first of all, I love this presentation. I love this data.
Oh, thank you.
VineGo is so important to our community, and I'm really encouraged to see the growth in this last quarter.
Yeah, it has been promising. And we're hoping in the next few quarters we see something similar. So it means people who maybe couldn't get out otherwise, they're getting out.
All right. Yes, Director Manfree.
I just, thank you. This is really helpful. And I had a couple of questions about demographics. How are you seeing youth ridership, high school students attending the JC? Have you ever broken that out? Do you have a sense of what it's like?
Yeah, well, we know a couple of things, I guess, offhand, is that Napa High has between a combination, they've always had better service. They have every 30-minute service there on Jefferson, and they have maybe a bit of a culture. Kids are coming from Redwood, having the option to ride a bus. That's by far, in terms of the Napa Valley Unified School District, where we get the most ridership from. We do have a recent program with Napa Valley College where students are paying a small fee each semester in exchange for free transit rides, or I guess they're paying a fee to be able to ride all semester. So that just started in January. So we'll get some better data from that, but we could definitely show you just kind of basically a heat map and where people are getting on and off that would focus on schools.
Okay, is that a voluntary fee or is it across the student body?
It's essentially across the student body. I believe there is an opt-out, and then it depends on if you're a full-time student or part-time student, what that fee is. Full-time, we're looking just about $8 per semester. So it's, reasonable, I think.
Great, thank you.
Sorry. Any comments from the public? Come on up.
Yes, come on up.
Oh, yeah. Go.
Ashley Heisey again from the CAC. I have a story to share also for the week. As we strive to serve the riders. So my story of the week is a man that I'll call the Yountville North Block Hotel night worker. So I ride the bus every day and had seen him for many days, and people are often happy to share their story. It's a young man with epilepsy, so he's not able to drive. It's out of the hours of Vingo because he cleans the kitchen at the restaurant at night. He starts at 10:30. He has to come to Yountville 2.5 hours early because that's the last bus north. So he said his life right now is pretty much bus, work, bus, sleep, and that is this young man's life. He's going to move in the next few months to Portland, in large part because the transit system will allow him to have a more balanced life. So I encourage our board to interface as much as possible with the employers because all of our kitchens are being cleaned by somebody. And I think we have a little bit of a gap, a lack of use of the 29 on the weekends. You know, I'm now taking the 11 to Soul Trans to El Norte on the weekends, and it takes 3 hours to get to Berkeley. It's much faster during the weeks. And I would also like to serve people like the Yountville North Block hotel night worker. It's working, he has a job, but it's really not sustainable. And it's definitely one of the goals of our transit system is that it's safe, comfortable, and efficient for people's lives. This is really not efficient for this young man. So thank you for your time.
Right. So this was just a receive a report. So I want to move now to, thank you very much, Rebecca, for your report and the comments. And now we go to 11.3, federal and state legislative updates.
Just for the sake of time, I'm going to dispense with my report. Just a couple highlights, though. You know, we are really trying to follow the federal activities. It's a little bit like watching a ping pong game. We will try to keep you apprised of everything that has anything to do with the DOT and, you know, specifically things that we are looking for in terms of resources to fund our projects. On the state side, the Friday is the deadline to introduce legislation, and we will have a full slate of bills for you to consider at the March meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Future agenda items, I'd like to suggest, and I think staff was gearing up for this, is a discussion on how to increase ridership. We've talked about free fares, we've talked about reliability and so forth, but it'd be nice if we could schedule a general discussion and maybe scope out some options in an upcoming agenda. Any other future agenda items? Director.
Yes, just a general question, just for my knowledge as a new director. As far as I know, Jefferson used to be a state highway, and there's a Caltrans maintenance yard there that's been there for a long time on a road that's no longer a state highway. Has there been discussion at this body here about that location, maybe relocating? I mean, it'd be a great place for housing. So just so I'm kind of up to date, and because I'd love to discuss that.
You know, we've had not super recent, but over the last couple of years, discussions about consolidating corporate yards and also acquiring that for our maintenance facility. And those talks have gone nowhere, but we'll add it to our Caltrans list of things to talk about, and we'll report back to you.
Thank you, because my last conversation with them was they were looking for a possible land swap. It was 3 acres, but they want to own the land. There was a possible swap for leased land, but they didn't want to lease, they wanted to own land. So that's the last report I got from them a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to follow up, I did mention this to Rebecca, but I would like to have an assessment, a further assessment, and report back on shelters and how it looks for each jurisdiction, and maybe even kind of a budget concept, if that's appropriate, but just a further look on how we can work together increasing the shelters in this community, this county.
That seems doable. All righty. If that's all there is, I'd like to point out we're going to go into closed session now. We have 2 items to consider, and we can, Oz, if you can do whatever needs to be said in that respect.